Islam, and welcome to Moore's Heritage and History School. This is your host, Annie Ida. Before we start this recording, on behalf of Rosmariah Bay, myself, Annie Ida, Mizraim Aleph Il, and Kujo Agwa Il, and all the people behind the scenes that help us make this broadcast, the classes, the lectures, everything that we do possible in association with RV Bay Publications, Moore's Heritage and History School, Nation Public Records, moorishnews.wordpress.com, and Mantis Views 29. We all would like to thank you for your support in participating and listening to our forums and broadcasts. However, the universe thanks you more. This Thanksgiving is the time when you must ask yourself if you have reaped enough to sustain the coming months of the winter solstice. This also translates to whether you have learned lessons from the seeds of thought you planted and the deeds you have done. We trust you have. We trust you will. If you have not, cycles of time brings the lessons we all must learn. We bring you greetings. Tonight, we will replay yet another classic from 2014. This addresses the truth about Thanksgiving and that we ought to be thankful for the lessons learned, and having learned lessons, have harvested good that will sustain us through the winter solstice, which is a time of reflection and contemplation of what has been learned in preparation of the coming new growth in the new year, spring. I trust the information is and will be most informative, so we bring it back again tonight as a listening event. We here at Moore's Heritage and History School and MHHS Wide Open Blogtalk Radio. Thank you all for listening, participating, and contributing as we all participate in uplifting fallen humanity and ourselves individually. Much peace and love.
Islam, and welcome to the special edition of the Moore's Heritage and History School near Harlem Corporation at Northwest Amexem. This is your host, Annie Ida L., along with, for today's show, well, actually, it's not usually done this way. This is Annie Ida L. and my co-host, Rosmariah Bay. Islam.
And a good day.
Islam to all our listeners. We're doing a special broadcast today. This is not how we normally do our Wednesday broadcast, but being that Wednesday is the day before the, what's the celebration? It's not giving. It's really a harvest celebration, and it's the, what is it? The fall equinox or solstice?
Well, actually, no, because it already occurred. When the fall came in, but it's that this entire season is based on harvesting and reaping what you sow. Yeah, and so what it means is that this is what we normally would do, and it's in order with universal cosmological occurrences, in order with nature and the earth. But because we were slaughtered in our relaxed time and literally, ambushed while sitting and heads cut off, they then altered and presented this time as Thanksgiving with a turkey, which represents the Turkish Moors, because that's what we are, Turks and Moors. And they cut off the head and they have you eating the flesh of a turkey, and we don't even realize that this is what's happening. But the more important thing is that we don't throw I'm going to use the terminology, baby, out with the bathwater, in that we are supposed to be in the mode of giving thanks. And because of these things and lack of knowledge of our true heritage and history, we drop it as if it belongs to the quote-unquote Europeans. This is their holiday. And it's just not true. And it takes us off of our connection with nature and the cosmological events or celestial vibrations, which is where celebration comes from. So it takes us off of that. All right. Right along.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Islam. All right, so, because of this Thanksgiving, because it comes on the, our usual Wednesday broadcast comes on the eve of the Thanksgiving, the giving thanks or the harvesting at this time of the year, and many people might not journey into that particular area. We didn't want to leave you hanging. So what we did is this candid conversation pre-broadcast, and this is a listening event. So we're bringing this to you so you will have some food for thought to listen to and contemplate on for this coming Wednesday. So we want to talk a little bit about...
We're broadcasting.
We're broadcasting the Wednesday. This is a pre-broadcast for Wednesday, which will be 25th of November, 1435, Moorish calendar year, 2015 Christian calendar year. And this is the candid conversation, discussion, food for thought, listening event. So we're going to, myself and Roz, we are going to have a candid conversation. And I think we should probably, because there's a lot of concepts that need to be corrected. And even though we have we have quite a lineup every week. We have Tuesday, we have Wednesday, and then, once a month we have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sometimes Sunday, or sometimes it's Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we have quite a lineup where, we're giving information, we're digging up information, we're bringing together concepts and thoughts, and, we're helping the people to get caught up as well as, up their game in terms of analyzing with strong emphasis on critical thinking, because, the prophet says, if I can just get you to thinking, you free yourself. And I always like to add lib in there, you mess around and free yourself, because it's just that easy. I mean, we have been mentally conditioned to just do as we are told and not think about anything. So these broadcasts are they're designed to help you to get things get you to thinking, and so we bring you certain concepts to consider today. And I'm thinking that we should begin with the letter from George Washington to Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Sultan of Morocco, city of New York, December 1st, 1789. It's very short. It's on the RV Bay Publications website, and it might do,
on
more
the Forgotten
well.
Scrolls page, just in case someone wants it. Forgotten Scrolls page.
It's also in the Congressional Record, which I'll probably go and pull it out, and we'll have the Congressional Record version as well. But it would do us well to read it from time to time so that we can be, as Moors, we can be very clear on who is who and what is what. All right, so, I'm going to read it, and then we're going to talk about it. And we're also going to read the letter from Benjamin Banneker. And we're going to
read it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say, so we can get right to the chase of certain things. Prior to you reading, I just wanted to say one of the misconceptions that we've recently heard, and when you when you listen to this letter, you'll see for yourself, or judge for yourself, or analyze for yourself, is that during this particular letter that the modern Europeans, headed by their appointed president of the United States of America, not the United States, that he was telling the Sultan in this letter that they were not going to be enforcing the Constitution. Now, how someone got that out of this when the first sentence tells you right there that they were actually coming out from under the rule of the England or British rule and accepting, in fact, the Constitution. It's in the very, very first line. So how someone gets that out of this letter, I don't know. What kind of concepts would people have? I don't get it. I don't know. I really
right. Now, you know what? Here's the thing. People need to know who is who and what is what. And with that in mind, I'm going to give you some key points to keep in mind. The modern Europeans, today erroneously identified as white people, they are then and they are now. Well, I should say they came over here as slaves. Slaves refer to Slavic serfs. Slaves, Slavics, those are your modern Europeans. These are the people who came over, by the way, on the boat. You know, the boat's names were the Mayflower, the Santa Maria, one of them is the Good Ship Jesus. All, these boats came over from Great Britain. And the slaves that were on those boats, which, by the way, exist to this day, can be found, you know, there is a log record and everything of it. These are the slaves, modern Europeans, who came over on those boats out of the prison of Great Britain to work in the companies that were established, and those companies, they were you know, the word company and plantation. These words are used interchangeably because they mean the same thing. The treatment of these workers, slave workers, were so terrible. They had absolutely zero rights. They were not even considered to be human beings. They were considered fixtures, which, by the way, this is why they were registered and by the registrar as fixtures of the various different corporations. Today, those corporations are absolutely referred to as counties. Counties, the definition of county is a corporation. If you go and do the research, these counties, in some cases, are called municipal offices, municipal counties, which means they are Roman corporations, but some of them are corporations of Great Britain. Their charter comes straight from Great Britain. So the Constitution that would have been coming over under, as they expressed in the letter to the people of Great Britain in 1774, is the Constitution of Great Britain. So in this letter from George Washington to Mohammed ibn Abdul, Sultan of Morocco, it is saying that they are changing their constitution. They are changing from the constitution that they followed under from Great Britain to the Constitution, the law of the Great Peace here, which is based on universal law and is inscribed in the hearts of Lords. There was no need for it to be written down. However, it was subsequently written down and documented. This is the Constitution that they are changing to. And if you do your historical reading, you will know this and you will not be confused. Go ahead, Roz. You were saying something?
I wanted to make and in between that time, the Articles of Confederation held it down until, which was short-lived for like 7 or 8 years, held it down while all of these, when you mentioned the great law of peace as well, held it down until the Supreme Constitution law of the land was established. After that, none of those agreements or that they had written, really, that they had between Britain meant anything to this American law. And I think this might be where they get confused, because this will interject real quick, because it doesn't take much to clear that up. When someone thinks that Article 6 ought to support, when it says all agreements entered into prior to this Constitution are valid, they're not talking about the 1643 Confederation that these Europeans made with the British or the English. They're not talking about them, because they weren't made with and right under the Constitution. And see, you said it. If you studied, you would know that. So they're not even talking about them. They're not formal or proper to this newly, as he said, instituted Constitution, which was really done especially for them as part of the whole thing. And the last thing you just mentioned, how they were registered with, like, the counties and municipalities or whatever, mainly the counties and counting. I have some people who actually write to us and want us to put they go and they register their allodial name correction and judicial notice and proclamation, and I suppose their ID, allodial ID, is also registered in an inferior county, and they want us to put the Register of Deeds, I don't know if I mentioned this, on their allodial American national identification. I have no idea why they're thinking that, other than they are confused. Why would you have an allodial American national ID and then put a Register of Deeds that means you're registering your stuff with an inferior county? You just said that that's what was done with slaves.
Yes.
So,
and the other thing that needs to be looked at with that request is there is a grave lack of respect when it comes to our own family. Great lack of respect. Because I am absolutely positive that none of these Moors who are asking for a county, county ID, county record number on their allodial national identification card. By the way, that makes it them that allodial identification card. The whole wording of it says that they are foreign to you. Foreign is not distant. Foreign is what is the relationship between the two. It is a foreign relationship. So to request that a marking from a foreign people be placed on your allodial national identification card is so out of order, and it shows a lack of absolutely. Because the second part of that lack of respect is this: I know for a fact none of these Moors are going to the Department of Motor Vehicle and asking them to put these markings on their documents, which, given the fact that the Department of Motor Vehicle is a foreign agency and they are foreign together, they are actually partners of the county. They're together. They are family together. It would make more sense for you to go and, if you're going to have a driving instrument and make demands on what you won't put on your driving instrument or your property card, whatever, it's just that's where you would go. But nobody's doing that, because I can tell you right now, this allodial identification card, it is yours. You know why? Because it is based on your nationality. However, it represents one national family. One national family, and that family is united, and that is why the allodial national identification cards are all alike.
Right. So, bring it back home. Why would you first of all go and register? You just said what the registry was at the counties for the slaves, for the European slaves to be registered. And then you put it in the deeds. Oh, that's another thing. They're putting it in the, recording it in the Office of Deeds. Now, what is that saying? And then you want that number from, it's crazy.
Well, see, once again, you know, if people would go back and study, they would see that the words patent, grant, deed, patent, grant, deed. Hold on a minute. It's four of them. I wrote them down so I would know for future reference. It's patent, grant, deed, charter, and mortgage are all evidence of a renter's agreement. All evidence of a rental agreement. So you're saying you want some deed number put on your allodial identification card, which represents one national family. And this deed implies that you're renting something, and you want this something noted you want this something of a foreign people noted on your national allodial identification card. What national family on planet Earth does that? Right. You know, we really do need to get our concepts correct. But what I do want to do at this time is I want to read this letter, and then we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to read the Benjamin Banneker letter, and we're going to put some more concepts on the table for people to follow along with. This letter from George Washington, all right, to Muhammad ibn Abdul, Sultan of Morocco, December 1st, 1789. It reads, "Great and magnanimous friend, since the date of their letter, which the late Congress by their president addressed to your Imperial Majesty, the United States of America, have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one, agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task, the disagreements occasioned by so great, though peaceable, a revolution, will apologize and account for your Majesty's not having received those regularly advised marks of attention from the United States, which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct toward them afforded reason to expect. The United States, having unanimously appointed me to supreme executive authority in this nation, your Majesty's letter of August 17, 1788, which by reason of the dissolution of the late government remained unanswered, has been delivered to me. I have also received the letters which your Imperial Majesty has been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashars of Tunis and Tripoli, and I present to you the sincere acknowledgments and thanks of the United States for this important mark of your friendship for them. We greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies towards this nation who have never injured them. It is not to be removed on terms of your of our power to comply with. Within our territories, there are no mines, whether of gold or silver, and this young nation, just recovering from the waste and dissolution of a long war, has not as yet had time to acquire riches by agriculture and commerce. But our soil is bountiful and our people industrious, and we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall gradually become useful to our friends. The encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominion, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor, make a deep impression on the United States and confirm their respect for and attachment to your imperial majesty. It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity of assuring your majesty that while I remain at the head of this nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that may conduce, every measure that may conduce to the friendship and harmony which so happily, which so happily subsists between your empire and them. And shall myself.
I don't mean to interrupt your reading, but you know that we are trying to clarify some things, and I had dropped out and I didn't realize that that you couldn't hear me. Everything that you just said, just because the point, one of the main points, is that how in this letter are they telling the Moors, the Sultan, which is a position that is held in the Moorish nation and government. How are they telling them that they're not intending to follow the Constitution? Aren't they telling them that they are in fact going to? And thank you very much. And we don't have nothing. We're going to try and grow some food and make it all good. Thank you so much for freeing us. How does anyone translate this to? Oh, they're letting them know they're not following the Constitution. And I think we said it earlier, but we want to just make it clear. They have dissolved, or they're no longer under the rule of the British. That's what they're saying, and they are coming under the Constitution. And he says, I know it's taken us a long time to get back to you with that, but finally, we received it, and thank you so much. We're on it. How does someone get from that thus far that they're telling them that they're not following the Constitution? I mean, it just has to be because they don't know who is who and what is what, right?
Exactly. They don't know who is what, and what is what. Okay. Another thought. I mean, the source of where they received this document is questionable as well, because there's, for example, and I say this because if you're not getting this from the RV Day publications or directly out of the congressional record, whatever you get, I can tell you it might be slightly different, and it's just those slight differences that will throw you off. And so, you have to whatever you're going to be getting, it doesn't, whether you get it from a reputable source or you get it like for example, I have read a lot of documentation, a lot of writings by these modern Europeans. However, because my base, my foundation so strong in the supreme law of this land, I have the ability to discern when you have a group of people who are trying to imply something that absolutely is not. I have that ability to discern that. But if your foundation is not strong, and if you have not taken the necessary time to study, analyze, dig, and just really get the whole concept of what that Constitution of 1791 is all about, you're going to miss. And I just want to clarify for people listening when I say study, yes, listen to the 13-month analysis we did of the American Constitution. It is good. But studying, it includes writing down that Constitution, downloading it, reading it, even taking some of the points in there and writing, sort of like an essay to yourself so you can get better comprehension. It also includes looking up, all kind of words in that American Constitution, 1791. That's
the key. That's the key. You just said American, and I just wanted to interject. This comes from the documents of American history. It's about the American history, not to be confused with the United States of America, and because it's telling you the history of what's going on the American land. And a lot of people don't discern between the fact that the United States of America is not when America started. They think it is. I mean, I'm going to use the word started, but they don't separate the two, knowing that we received them in this fashion to occupy and be occupied on the American land estate. That's what happened, and they don't know to separate that. They think everything started when the United States of America was formed, but then when you read the Constitution, it clearly tells you we're doing this for the United States of America, and they don't separate the two. And I think that is one of the biggest things. Their mindset is only coming from the Europeans' mindset of when they, were established here to occupy upon this land, and then were given the law of the land. I think that's the key. Yeah. I really do.
It is. And another key, and it's not talked about, but in order for the Moors of Great Britain to have come over here, they had to have a treaty. Now, prior to the British Moors receiving a treaty, the Dutch Republic, which is another a Moorish family, they received there was a treaty between Morocco and the Dutch Republic prior to the Moors of Great Britain. That's why the Dutch was over here first. Then the Morocco and Great Britain entered into a treaty to come over here and establish companies and engage in commerce. That is how the modern Europeans got over here. But because their treatment was so horrible, they, actually they had allies within the Moors here on the American soil, the Moors of Al-Murrah. They had allies who were sympathetic to their plight. And because the Moors here said, and this is in the congressional record, because the Moors here said, okay, we will lend you protection. However, in order for us to protect you under the Moors of Al-Murrah, because these modern Europeans, the most unfortunate thing, and it's like huge, the most unfortunate thing that these modern Europeans have is that they have no home here on planet Earth. If there's not a family to adopt them into and protect them, they are out there, like a ship without a paddle or a boat without a paddle. They have absolutely no protection, and you can check the history. They have gone all over planet Earth, and they have been adopted in, and they have been protected, and that's what the Moors here, the American soil, Al-Murrah says, we will protect you. We will bring you into the family and give you protection because the treatment that you're receiving is not good. And they said, okay, all right, well, we can do that. But here's the thing, and a lot of people miss this. They then said, well, we want to really be adopted into your government, and we want to, or the family, I should say, because, see, government and family is the same thing. They said, how can we get security? And that's why in that letter, they said, well, we want to enter into a treaty we want to enter into our own treaty of peace and friendship with Morocco. And Morocco said, slow your roll. We can't enter into any treaty with you, son, until you first get confirmation that your independence, that your freedom has been granted. That's all in the consider.
It's all John Adams' analysis letter. We should have added that. That's where you find that to be affirmed.
Yes,
first sentence. First sentence. What does the first sentence say in the analysis of the John Adams letter that where he was plenipotentiary requesting to have a treaty in the first place? And they were like you said, hold your roll, wait a minute, you asking us for a treaty of commerce? That's what they were originally asking. It's like furnishing a house before the foundation has been laid. Now, that's right in the first sentence when you open up the analysis of the John Adams letter. So, yeah, we don't study enough to realize what it's about.
Exactly, because they had no protection. So in order for them to really get into the protection of the Moorish family here, they had to first, and that would have been solidified in a treaty of peace and friendship, where they could then engage in commerce freely with the absolute protection of the Moors of Al-Marak. That had to, for that to go on, for us to enter into a treaty with them, they had to first declare, they had to first send off documentation so that they can be independent, hence the Declaration of Independence. And then we help them form their own nation styled as the United States of America. Or it's actually, and it was initially the Union States of America.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. So now, then that's documented in the what is it? Oh my gosh, what's the name of the second document in the Forgotten Scrolls? You got the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. I'll tell you in a minute. It's right here in the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation. Now, you're right. It's in the Articles of Confederation. The first paragraph, it says that you will be I forget the exact wording, but it says that you will be styled the United States of America.
It's right here. Wow, I'm looking at it because I printed it. It says Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America.
America, exactly. So now this United States of America, which is really started off as the Union States of America, and that's right in the congressional records as well. Union States of America.
That's another thing to deal with also, because it says that everything is delegated to them by the United States and Congress assembled. And it clearly said in Congress assembled, because when you go to that other letter that we talked about, Articles of Association, which is very short, it lets you know there that they were appealing to the Congress already existing to assist in helping them be free, and that they agreed to go along with the Congress, which Congress means to walk with, to Congress, to that's what it means. And that Congress was obviously and clearly not them, but it was us. And that they agreed to go along with what we established as Congress to be the interface with them. And it's right here in the Articles of Confederation, which is valid.
Right.
So there you go.
That's right. These are documents. Exactly.
I'm sorry, I just said study, and show yourself approved. That's what this is about, because you don't know who is who and what is what. You will be twisted. I mean, really twisted, because, you know, whatever they do, but it's in the confounds and limitations of the law of this land, which was handed to them and they agreed to. And you can continue to and explain how once this occurred, all of those charters, articles of confederation were null and void, because we brought them into government proper, because they were here like fish out of the sea, getting abused, and we said, okay, so in essence, the Constitution is the peace document for everybody, really.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing, and a lot of people don't know this. Prior to that treaty being signed, these modern Europeans would attempt to sail on the sea. And because they weren't under the protection of Great Britain, nor at that time did they have evidence that they were under the protection of the Moors of Al-Murrah, they would get plucked off of the waters all the time. Their ship would get taken, their cargoes would get taken, and they would, in some cases, they would then be sold off because they were slaves. And there was many requests to the Sultan of Al-Murrah, please, can we have a treaty, please, a friendship with you? And that's why they said, sure, no problem, but you got to be clear. This is 1780. The Declaration of Independence was written in 1776. In 1780, it still had not been confirmed that the Moors of Great Britain had released them. There was no treaty in 1780. And then it took another 6 years for the treaty to actually be written, and then the following year it was signed. And that's documentation. Once that happened, of course, all the Moors on planet Earth didn't get the memo, and they were still snatching these modern Europeans off of the sea, and they would run to the Sultan. Hey, they still kidnapping us. They still taking us. They taking our stuff, and and the Sultan would send a communication to the Moor, wherever they were, and those Moors over there basically was like, oh, my bad, I didn't get the memo. So we'll release your people, give you back your stuff, and, we'll call it a day. And that's right in the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. That treaty is between the Moors of Al-Murrah and the United States of America, so that they can be protected to engage in trade. That's history.
Yeah.
That's what the prophet said.
And make themselves useful, as he says in this letter. How about that?
Exactly. And he's saying, hopefully we can be useful to you. That's what he said.
They need to be useful to themselves, though, but, feed themselves and stuff like that. They do very well.
Look at the words he says, and we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall gradually become useful to our friends. Because they are no use to us. I mean, come on. What use would they be to us? We are the heirs to this land. We got everything. What use? What would they be used to us for? We got everything. We brought them in. We adopted them in to the family so that they can be protected, so that they can engage in commerce, and that they would have a constitution that would protect not just them, but most importantly us and our posterity. That's all documented. But like I said, people need to understand discernment. So let me complete this letter to the Sultan. It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity of assuring your majesty that while I remain at the head of this nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that may conduce to the friendship and harmony which so happily subsists between your empire and them, and shall esteem myself, he said empire there, okay, and shall esteem myself happy in every occasion of convincing your majesty of the high sense which, in common with the whole nation, I entertain the magnanimity, wisdom, and benevolence of your majesty. May the Almighty bless your imperial majesty, our great and magnanimous friend, with his constant guidance and protection. Islam, he's telling you exactly where he stands. This is not just George Washington, by the way. This is where all modern Europeans stand, and this is in 1789. Now let's read this letter, Benjamin. Let me see. Oh, it's 3 pages. But it's,
we don't need to read. We don't need to read all of the Benjamin Banneker letter. We only need to bring out a certain portion of it. But the Benjamin Banneker letter said.
I think this is the letter from Benjamin. I would say that it would be a great service to Moors to read the letter from Benjamin Banneker. All right, because it will first. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. It would be, see, and so now here's what's interesting. Now they're starting to, in their systems, bring up Benjamin Banneker and want to paint him the way they want to paint him. But more, you need to pull this daggone letter out, which is a letter to Thomas Jefferson from Benjamin Banneker. See, they're not going to pull that out and put it into your school systems for your children to learn. They're not going to do that. They're going to portray him in some other manner and not in the truth of what he was. Now, this letter is 2 pages. Actually, it's 2 pages, and then there's a return portion on the third. It's like 2.5 pages from Thomas Jefferson back to Benjamin Banneker. But again, here he says right here, this is to prove that they were under tyranny of Britain. It says, Sir, this is Benjamin Banneker. He says, suffer me to recall to your mind that time in which the arms and tyranny of the British Crown was exerted with every powerful effort in order to reduce you to a state of servitude. Look back, I entreat you, on the variety of dangers to which you were exposed. Reflect on that time in which every human aid appeared unavailable, and in which even hope and fortitude wore the aspect of inability to this conflict, and you cannot but be led to a serious and grateful sense of your miraculous and providential preservation. You cannot but acknowledge that the present freedom and tranquility which you enjoy, you have mercifully received, and that it is the peculiar blessing of heaven. Now, he says, this, sir, was a time when you clearly saw into the injustice of a state of slavery, and in which you had just apprehension of the horrors its condition. That right there is showing you that these Europeans were just coming out of slavery. That's what the whole war was about. That was what the North and the South was about, slavery to free them behind. Prove that they were slaves. And this, my family, is why they won't put this letter into the schools when they want to teach about Benjamin Banneker. They're going to twist it to some other crap, and this is also why we need to have our own schools to teach our own true history, because they're not going to do that. Now, let me just continue. He says, it was now that your abhorrence thereof was so excited, and you publicly held forth this true and invaluable doctrine, which is worthy to be recorded and remembered in all succeeding ages. Everybody knows what that's going to be. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right? Now, he's reminding these Europeans, wait a minute, hold on. We just helped you get free. Wasn't that what you said? Why are you looking at my brethren as if you want to put it with an eye to put them into slavery when we just helped your ass get out? See, that's the nature of these beings. So now, he says, here was a time in which your tender feelings for yourselves had engaged you thus to declare. You were then impressed with proper ideas of the great violation of liberty and the free possession of those blessings to which you were entitled by nature. But, sir, how pitiable is it to reflect that although you were so fully convinced of the benevolence of the Father of mankind and of his equal and impartial distribution of these rights and privileges which he has conferred upon you, that you should at the same time counteract his mercies in detaining by fraud and violence so numerous a part of my brethren under groaning captivity and cruel oppression, that you should at the same time be found guilty of the most criminal acts which you professedly detested in others with respect to yourselves. I mean, did he tell them? You fought against being enslaved, and now you want to turn around and enslave the brethren, and they're the very ones that helps you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a portion of it. I just want to tell you all, they're not going to read this letter in the schools because it would be, the children are so bright by nature that they would figure this out. Oh, so they were in slavery? It's right here. Right here. And then you have some of our Moors. Oh, well, we were the ones who were more, they want to say Morocco. We can segue right into that. Morocco was one of the biggest slave traders. Look, everybody, we as Moors were the first to do slave trading. Yes, that is a fact. You best believe it. It sure is. And we suffered the karma of it. So telling the truth as it is what is necessary so that we can acknowledge and fix it. But we already really did. When we offered the Constitution, and even though we weren't the ones, the Morocco on this side, let's say the Al Moroccans here, were not the ones. We extended the peace by doing this so that everybody could live in peace, including them, with the limitations as granted to them on the Constitution, which is fair. Still, it occurred through our family, even though our family may have been divided or whatever like that. Still, the only answer for everyone, and the prophet says it all the time, is to enforce the Constitution, period, because that's the law of the land. Yeah. And Eve, you had mentioned that, we keep going on, and I guess we'll get into it later, but a lot of people go on to, the outside of the United States law, there's documents they're doing, and what they don't understand is the only law is what was established in the Constitution, and quite frankly, there doesn't need to be any more, and they can't be any more to this date at all. That's it, and that's all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And let me just say this. Let me add one more thing in reference to, hold just a second, in reference to this Thomas Jefferson letter. This letter to Thomas Jefferson from Benjamin Banneker. He even, remember how they will tell your children in school that he created the almanac, that he gave them an almanac or whatever like that. This letter supports that fact because he says in here,
the almanac.
Yeah.
For the almanac.
Yes, he mentions in here. He says, I am, and now, sir, although my sympathy and affection for my brethren have caused my enlargement thus far. That means he's involved in supporting and saving and his own brethren in this situation. I ardently hope that your candor and generosity will plead with you in my behalf when I make known to you that it was not originally my design to do this, but having taken up my pen in order to direct to you as a present a copy of an almanac which I have calculated for the succeeding year, I was unexpectedly and unavoidable led there, too. In other words, she's telling them I really didn't plan to do this because I was busy handling this slavery, freedom stuff, but really for y'all, for everybody. But I did it anyway because the publishers were really waiting for me. Okay, he says here, he didn't think he was going to be able to do it because of this other preoccupation that was happening with this war and the slavery and the whole bit, ending slavery. He says this calculation is the production of my arduous study in this my advanced stage of life. For having long had unbound desires to become acquainted with the secrets of nature, I have had to gratify my curiosity herein through my own assiduous application to astronomical study, in which I need not recount to you the many difficulties and disadvantages which I have had to encounter. And although I had almost declined to make my calculations for the ensuing year, in consequence of that time which I had allotted, therefore, he's telling them, look, I was planning to do this, but I got waylaid with this other stuff, freeing you. So, but being taken up as the federal territory. Now he goes into proving to you that he had to make the plans for the building of the White House, so-called what we call White House, as the office for connection to for the Europeans. And he goes right into it. He says, I had allotted therefore being taken up at the federal territory by the request of Mr. Andrew Ellicott, yet finding myself under several engagements to the printers of this state. So he was supposed to do an almanac. He had to do plans for the daggone White House. And, you know, he'd already obligated to it. He didn't think he was going to do it, but he managed to do it. He says, yet finding myself under several engagements to printers of this state to whom I had communicated my design, on my return to my place of residence, I industriously applied myself thereto, which I hope I have accomplished with correctness and accuracy, a copy of which I have taken the liberty to direct to you, and which I humbly request you will favorably receive. And although you may have the opportunity of perusing it after its publication, yet I choose to send it to you in manuscript, previous thereto, that thereby you might not only have an earlier inspection, but that you might also view it in my own handwriting. So what he's saying is, I'm giving you, this is why it's so important, they'll note that, I'm giving you a original manuscript almanac as a present. But you could peruse it once it's published anyway. So it's a gift to them, as you mentioned earlier, where they were, hoping that they could grow food and hoping that they would be useful. And he helped them with the almanac, still used today. So in this Benjamin Banneker letter, you see that as well, and you see where he talks about his being taken up to federal territory. And then if you go to the Maryland House, of which they erased it off the wall, but we do have a picture, and I think it's going into a book that Ms. is doing, or somehow we'll get the picture up. There's a picture of Benjamin Banneker with a surveying instrument, and he's surveying the land. And this is in Baltimore, by the way. This is the Maryland House in Baltimore off the highway as a stop, a pit stop, gas, food, whatever. And they had a mural of it on the wall, which is further proof that he was designing that White House for them as well as giving them the almanac. Now, they'll take those two things out maybe now that they have to do something or say something about Benjamin Banneker since we've dug him up, but they will never put this letter. But yet we have it on the site, and it's from the records. This is affirmed, okay? This is history of American history. From the American documents of American history, this is real. It's in the archives of Thomas Jefferson's letters as well, because he wrote it to Thomas Jefferson. So you see, this is why we have to have our own schools to teach our own, so that we know the truth and we're not fooled by why we're even doing this broadcast today. To straighten up people's concepts of what, and Eve, how do we say it again? Who is who and what
and
is
what
what.
Is what. And the thing is, Prophet already gave us the end game. We already know what the end game is going to be. However, between now and then, we really, as a people, and and this is on the mothers, really, we really got to, we really, mothers, y'all need to go into these temples and take your place, really, because it said that these temples are supposed to have a school, all right? Who's supposed to run the school? And why she ain't in there? Mother has got to go into these temples and take her place and start establishing the school that is supposed to be in there and remove, so that we can begin to remove our children from these money-making, or I should say credit-generating institutions that are nothing more than companies disguised as institutions of learning. They're not that. They're credit-generating, they're revenue generators, and they just slap a name on the building and call it a school, and people think that the children are going there and learning, yet they have a whole report that was written in 1983, 84 that documents how horrible the educational system was then, and guess what? It has gone downhill drastically since then. So there is no education going on in these institutions, pretty much because it was never intended for education to go on in those institutions. If you was to do the research, you will find that those institutions were set up to train the next generation to take over the job of their parents. And those parents and those generations that was slated to take over, they were modern Europeans. Moors were and still are the heirs of the land. And if you go back into the history, people always, look, we need to really study the prophet's work. He said, there will come a day when you see a $20 bill on the ground and you will step over it. What does that mean? That means that day will come when you absolutely comprehend that you are an heir or a beneficiary, an heir, and you never needed a worthless piece of paper. How do you know this? What kind of analysis can you do that supports that? Here's a question to ask everybody, because everybody they get tunnel vision and they start looking at, the corporations went bankrupt in 1933. Well, let's go back 20 years. What were they doing prior to 1913, which is when Federal Reserve Corporation was established? What were we as Moors doing prior to 1913? Could we had homes? We had business. We were able to eat, and we had agriculture going on. What were we doing then? We need to go back and study, and I'll give you a hint. It's a twisted movie, but go back and watch Beloved. That sister wasn't working, yet she had a home. Right? She had she went to the market, and she was able to get stuff.
On so-called credit, just for her signature.
Right?
Yeah.
The prophet said, if I can just get you more to thinking, you would mess around and free yourself. But the Moors ain't thinking. And they keep messing around and enslaving themselves deeper in the cesspool.
Yeah. But,
they want to bring their brethren along with them. Oh, yeah, man, you need to come on over here so you can get your registered copy from the registrar of the county corporation so you can go get your stuff. What stuff? What
you're giving them rights. They're giving them life. They're breathing life into these things and don't even realize it,
You're going further into the cesspool. And the prophet said, careful. Some of your own wearing turbans and feathers will put you right back in slavery. Now, some of them are doing it unintentionally because they ain't studied, and some of them are doing it intentionally because they're just they just turned on the family. But that's nothing new.
Yeah,
that's nothing new. That's going on before the prophet passed form. So that's nothing new. And then we have more talking about, and this is something else. The prophets, I can't say it enough. The prophet said, study, 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 because if you would just study, you'd have something to think about, and if you would just start thinking, you'd mess around and free yourself. Now you got more sitting here talking about, they're using some sort of a statute, and they're using it in their documentation, and it says, I'm without the United States, or within the United States. And here's the thing. The United States is a construct for Al-Murrah.
Yeah.
All right?
Interface to interface with these fools.
Yes, it's an interface. The United States is an interface for Al-Murrah. So when you put on your paper that you're without the United States because you have not done the proper studying, you think that it's saying I'm outside of the jurisdiction of these modern Europeans, when in fact what your document just said is I am outside of the protection of the United States / American Constitution 1791. Therefore, I am up for grabs for anyone because now I am a stateless person.
And that's why they're grabbing them left and right, especially when they take their allodial documentation, be it the name correction, judicial notice, and or the card, and they put a register of deeds on it. They don't get it. So they're like, oh, my gosh, they don't even realize they just they took their allodial stuff, which is really annoying. They took their allodial stuff, and they registered it with us. Let's go get them. And that's why they're after you, because you don't really get it yet, and you don't know that you just committed fraud upon yourself.
Exactly.
Fraud upon yourself. And, but I do want to say one other thing, and then you go on. Let's make it clear that in an ideal situation, we ought to be in the temples with the schools, as the prophet said. And we know this. But we also know that we are not going to make that as a quest, because to go and try to straighten out these temple Moors that are leading these temples and that are giving these younger people now, or anybody who asks, a charter so that they can have control or whatever like that. And then the people who get the charter are usually sons. They're usually always sons, always. And then they walk around with their arrogance and like they got it going on without realizing they're doing what is called reverse church, and that can be proven in every aspect. And yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I thought you said and then so for us to even think that we're going to go take on or that we ought, yes, it ought to be that way, but that we're going to take them on, that means we will be directly fighting our own damn people, which are mostly the sons running that. And they're running it like a club. There's no question about that. And the prophet himself said, I'm taking the covers off of all secret organizations. So what mothers need to do, we can't go in. We are the temple. The temple building is just a representative of the true temple, which is the body. And people have returned to the temple left and right and left, and those who are in temples as leaders, and many of them do not recognize that, because they think it means that they're going to return to their membership. But that's not what it necessarily means, although many have done so, and we can understand why, because you're seeking to be correct. But when you go into some of these infiltrated temples, you're getting your hats totally messed up because it's secret, a club. It's not what the prophet said. It isn't. I don't care what they tell you. They might give you a little bit of this and a little bit of that. They are actually controlling you. And mothers, you are the one who is that actually produces the temple. You are the temple and you produce the temple. How are you going to hand it over to a club in order for people to think that they have salvation? The prophet never said that. He said the only way is through Moore's divine and natural movement of the world, which is the activities under that umbrella that are writing it back to his directives, whether it be a temple or not. The temple is just one component of this entire information and movement. It's just one. Islam.
Yes. Yes. So, you know, and this is the other thing I wanted to bring out. You got these Moors and, you know, that American Constitution, it is so incredibly complete. It has covered everything. And as the heirs to this document, all right, because our ancestors wrote that, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface. Yet you got Moors talking about, oh, well, you know what? We they say in the divine constitution of bylaws, which is for the temple, in there it says, you know, we have authority to write laws. Yeah, you do. But what law would you be writing that has not already been covered by our ancestors? What law?
It should be any infraction done. It should be any infraction done. Well, anyway, guys, they don't need to write any laws. They need to enforce the ones that exist and understand the difference between, and I'm glad you're going to do this, Annie, between a law and a statute.
Yes, because here's the thing. You know, a statute is not law. A statute is not law. The laws, when you look at that American Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That means everybody and everything adheres to that supreme law of the land. Why? Because it is in harmony with it's in harmony with universal principles. That's why if you got Moors out there talking about, oh, you know, a union state suspended the Constitution, they ain't studied. Because the Constitution was written to keep that company/corporation in check. So the very entity it was drafted to protect the flesh and blood people from has no power or authority to turn around and get rid of the protection. All right. Now the temple's divine law and constitution and bylaw, yeah, you got the authority to write law, but the law has already been written that would protect all people. Now you're saying if you're a member of the temple, the first Bill of Rights protects you across the board. And there's nothing that anybody can write. Now, the law has already been written. And if you read that American Constitution of 1791, Article 1 says that laws, the legislative power, the power to write law is vested in the Congress of the United States. That's the Moors. But the Moors are asleep. But even if they was awake and in their seats, there is no need to write any law because it's been covered. Now, Article 2 of the Constitution says that laws are executed by the President of the United States of America. So if the United States of America is writing anything under the form of a statute, it is to administer, to execute the laws that has been written. And that still must be in harmony with the American Constitution of 1791. It damn sure enough don't supersede or replace, because you have to know that that American Constitution was put down in written form to bring the modern Europeans into government with all, and it afforded them, and it says it right in there, it afforded them certain privileges and benefits, but not all of the privileges and benefits. The only thing it brought to them was protection. Can they purchase the land? Nope. But they have renter authority, meaning that they can use the land, but they can't ever own the land. And that's why every single document that they come up with, it is all about using the stuff, but they can't ever own it because they are not the heirs to this land. We just gave them the ability to live in peace and harmony and to be able to worship under any form that they so choose, because that was another thing that they were being, violated on. They couldn't worship unless they were worshiping under the Catholic Church, or the Protestant Church. And the church name would change depending on who was sitting in the seat as a king of Great Britain. Now, when Henry took seat, he created a third option, the Church of Great Britain. So they had three, depending on who was sitting in that seat, your so-called worship had to be according to them. So when Henry was in the seat, it was Catholic. But then the Catholics, the popes and everything, they pissed him off, so he started his own religion, much like Constantine did when he established the Christian religion. All right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now,
start the Church of England or the Church of Great Britain. Islam, go ahead.
I'm going to put to bed right now, I trust, what the duty and what it's meant when it says to make law. All right? Now, we're not talking about the bylaws of the club. When we're talking about civil here, let's see what it is. Because this has been one of the questions of the nationality, national identification card test that we say you should take yourself. And one of them is, it's called, I'm going to do the other one first. Okay. Just precarium and just praetorium. Now, just praetorium in civil law is the discretion of the praetor as distinct from the legis or standing laws. That kind of law which the praetors introduced for the purpose of aiding, supplying, or correcting the civil law for the public benefit. That's the position, all right? When it is violated by who? By just precarium in civil law, a right to a thing that is held for another. This is what these trustees are with the law of the land, all right? There is no remedy by legal action, only by entreaty or request. So the public servants, public officials are holding only by way of being trustees of the Moorish estate and have been given obligations and duties as described in the Constitution and the Articles of the Constitution. They, however, have no right of claim unless it is entreated to them by request and granted or permitted by law. However, they never ask. They just eschew the inheritance. Thus, the prophet Noble Jolie came in to tell us about our illustrious history and illustrious estate, saying we are rich, you are rich, right? Our position in law, of course, is then just praesens, which means a present or vested right, a right that is already completely acquired. So back to the sheep and being able to do law. Back to just praetorium, spelled Praetorium, and yes, you can find it in the law dictionary. This is the position the sheiks and the grand sheiks are supposed to hold, and to effectuate in the spirit of making law and enforcing law for the Moorish nation, as the Moorish nation is the authorizing nation state and encompasses the whole body of law, just, J-U-S, by way of just sanguine, by blood, and being in this land, which is the estate and dominion of Moors. That's where they are. Again, the kind of law which the praetors, which would be them, were introduced for the purpose of what? Of aiding, supplying, or correcting the civil law for the public benefit. Now, that's their duty.
Islam. Yes, Islam. Wow. So there you have it. This, there's this stage that we're talking about here. It is so imperative for people to study and get their mind right, get their concept right, because we're moving into a phase, and physically. But this phase that we're moving into physically, we can move into it spiritually before, we move into it physically. If people would just study, this studying that we talk so much of, the information that we give, it is about freeing you of that mental enslavement. And a lot of people don't get it. Why is it imperative that you are free from the mental enslavement? Because you can't move on to the next stage unless you first free yourself from that mental enslavement. You're not going to be able to move on. This is all about freeing you of your mental enslavement, but you can't move on to the next stage until you first, get a grip on where you are now. Tell you about the next stage if you can't even comprehend freeing your mind now. Because what is going to happen is this. If you don't first free your mind, just like they said in the Matrix, if you're not one of us, you're one of them. And a lot of the things...
no fight really is spiritual, but go ahead, it's spiritual.
Exactly. And a lot of people, you got to get over the mental, physical enslavement first before you can move on. You got to. Because if you don't, you will turn on your family, which is what is happening right now. Because we have so many Moors who have not done the proper studying, they really don't know. And so they inadvertently sometimes, and sometimes it is intentionally, turn on their family. And that's what's happening when you see these Moors, and they themselves go, and then they encourage other Moors to go and submit to a foreign people and give all sorts of documentation that say that contradicts your documentation that says, hey, I'm a Moor. I'm not under your jurisdiction. I don't hate you or anything, but that's not where I am. See, any Moor who gives you documentation that contradicts that, they are either intentionally or unintentionally turning on their family because they have not freed their minds from the mental enslavement. And so they can't even get to the next step. And then when you try to pull their coattail, they get upset with you. They want to say, oh, because mother is trying to save her children, they say stupid things like, oh, she hates men. No, she don't, because she is the man. And she don't hate her son. She's trying to save her son. She's trying to pull your coattail. She's trying to tell you, don't be doing things premature.
Well, I'm going to tell you the other reason. I want to just go back a second. The other reason they do it is because they don't really know who is who and what is what, and they follow some of the things that these modern Europeans from the United States of America jurisdiction, limited as it is to them, but they follow the things that they say is law, and they do that because they don't know the difference. They don't know the difference. They actually think, like, they don't understand that it's a direct attack to violate the law of the land. It's a direct attack on them and their families to violate it. You know, I mean, it truly, truly is. And that's what, let me just add this, pull this back up real quick. And that's what's so important. It's so important that we understand that. This is why they even have stare decisis case laws. Whether they ever made a case law or not, the law is the law. The only reason it exists is because people have tried to violate those divine rights and those rights that liberties that have been spelled out that they are not supposed to violate. But of course, they've been doing it for so long. So instead of people taking a position of enforcing the law of the land, which is the absolute only answer, they want to try to see if they can go in and, join the two. You can't join the two. That's not your jurisdiction. You're supposed to stand tall, especially as a son, stand, a defender of the law, obey the law, an enforcer of the law. You're supposed to stand tall against it. Instead, they want to see, well, how can we get in? They act as if these people actually have the absolute control over their land resources when they don't. Yeah. And that's the other reason they do it. And that boils down to they just simply don't know who is who and what is what. And it's confusing, especially for anyone. I'm not going to say especially for sons. I don't want to get into that, but it's confusing for anyone who doesn't know that. It just is. And they are just enforcing the wrong thing.
Exactly. And that's important, because until you free your mind and know who is who and what is what, you're going to constantly go to these modern Europeans who are the foreigners on American soil, asking them for your stuff like this is their land, like they are the nationals, like they are the heirs. And look, it's already been said they're not the heirs, because see, there's a reason it's called heir apparent, all right? Because that means apparent. It's so apparent who the heir is. Look at the definition of American. Copper tone people found here. Copper tone people found here. That's not them. And then when you read the Declaration of Independence, they tell you they wasn't found here. They came over here. They came over here.
Could you please add found here by the Europeans, the copper tone, the Aboriginal people, or the various copper tone people found here found on the continent by the Europeans.
Yeah. And just for further clarity, they weren't found here by the modern Europeans. They probably was found here by the modern Europeans, because they didn't know, and they say it, they didn't know nothing of, where other family on the land is, on planet Earth is. But the British Moors knew that we was here. How did they know? Because they got a treaty from us prior to coming over here. All right, how did they know? Because there was a government in full swing prior to them coming over here. Let me tell you, what is new? The Johnny-come-lately, the stepchildren. Not that we hate them, but it's just to be clear. The Johnny-come-latelys, the new kids on the block, so to speak, is the modern Europeans. They're the ones that didn't know who the national family on planet Earth is, because they're not a part of the national family. Be doctored into.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to the whole reason of this concept correction here, that we do not know who is who and what is what, which means we do not know who we are. And that was one of the other reasons the prophet came. He said, I came to teach you to do what? Be yourself.
Exactly. Yep. And he said, I also come to free you from mental slavery.
Oh, that too. And being yourself is a defender of the law, not a go try to figure out what they're doing. You can know what they're doing and not doing by knowing what it's supposed to be, studying, knowing what the law is, and the protection of your liberties are, and what everybody is supposed to do. By knowing that, you can recognize very easily. See, this is why people say, well, they said they have this law that says body boo. Excuse me, let me see that. That's not a law. You don't know what the law is? Can't you see that's a direct violation of your liberty? And they don't.
That's like going to for not that they're not family everywhere, but that's like, for example, that's like going to another part of the land and studying their procedures, and then coming over here and saying, oh, well, China said that we can't do this, or Japan said we can't do this, or Great Britain said we can't do this. It doesn't matter what they're doing. What matters is what you're doing. And I'll say this.
It's interesting you said Great Britain, because that brings us to a distinction here again. The laws of Great Britain are not the American law. They do not apply to American law, and the laws of Great Britain is what was imposed upon the modern Europeans who were here in slavery under that rule, who then fought for their independence to not be under that rule anymore. And that's what this is all about.
Yes, exactly. And I'll say this. There's more out there. They're studying the policies and the procedures of the modern European. And I'll say this. If it is not in your best interest, and it is not. I mean, and I say this, when I say that, I mean this. I'm going to say, because I have to put a disclaimer on what I'm about to say. If your job requires you to go and study their policies and procedures, because we got more operating as attorneys, on the wrong team. We got more operating as attorneys for these foreigners, and their job requires them to keep up with the various policies and procedures. First of all, you might want to rethink being on that team, because you're hurting yourself, because those family members that you are imposing those policies and procedures on, that is your family. And what you have done to your brother, you have done to yourself. Universal principle. One mother's breast has given us all suck. We are one nation. All right? The second part of that. The more you study their policies and procedures, the more you're going to be mentally under the spell of the modern Europeans, meaning their mental conditioning that you're suffering under, it ain't going nowhere, because you're reinforcing it with the same negative information that is working against you now and has been working against you all your life. And if you think what I'm saying is not true, I'm going to give you an example. If you listen to the radio, I don't. If you listen to the radio, on Monday, you will hear a song that you cannot stand. First note, you can't stand it. It just doesn't even rub you well. But that radio station that you listen to every day is going to play that song every day, same time. You're going to listen to it. By Friday, you're going to be singing the words of the song, snapping your finger and bouncing your head, bobbing your head, and you're going to be like, yeah, that song is cool. Now, remember, repetition is the key here. Monday, you hated it. By Friday, through repetition, mental conditioning, reinforcement, by Friday, you loved it. It was right and correct.
Programming, and that's what they do in the schools for the children, programming.
Correct. So now if you are studying the policies and the procedures of these modern Europeans, if you're studying these various different ways that these modern Europeans are trying to use all these different processes to claim our ancestral estate, you're reinforcing the mental conditioning that is not of your family, and it does not benefit you at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're not diluting the mental programming at all. You're enforcing it. which means that you're not doing yourself any good. And this is why the prophet said, study, study, study.
You know, and that's interesting. Like you said, it's programming, and I think that, you know, you said it best, is that it's just like with us. If we know, and mothers as well, if we know from the door what's happening, and we're teaching our children, you know, they'll already know. They'll already recognize these things, you know, and it'll be instilled in them already. And this is why it was important for us, and the prophet made it clear to all those who were operating temples. See, we think that the only way for us to be more is if we go to a temple when we are the temple, and that was an institution that was established for these teachings, and, you know, and that's fine, but the institution does not create the cause. The cause creates the institution. And so that's why the divine and national movement of the world, which is likened to an umbrella, meaning it's any work that you're doing that is uplifting and in line is what you is where the salvation will be, you know. And I think that's why it was important that you made that statement, knowing what was going to happen to the temples in terms of the infiltration that already was occurring before you even left it. So when we do this, no, go ahead. I'm just saying it's so important. It's so important for us to really, you know, understand these things. But if we study, because even, look, everything that you were supposed to know was in the temple as it's supposed to be, that is if it did have a school, then you wouldn't have any real need to, or he wouldn't have any real need to say that it's the only way is through the more divine and national movement, or that you need to study, or that somewhere in turbans and fedges will put you back into slavery. It's clearly not there. What you find in temples, and I recently was speaking with someone, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not putting any names to it, or appellations, because it's unimportant, but some of these temples suppress the sister so badly. I knew this sister, and say she had her photo, she had her turban wrapped just right. She didn't have it too high for, you know, to show extended ego. She didn't have it flat on her head to absolutely cut off her royalty, because the turban, for instance, represents, you know, your royalty. It's your crown. It's your crown. And so they'll go into the temples, and I didn't share this with you yet, but I'm going to. I'm going to send you the photo, actually. And she told me it was all right if I did, because when it was given to me, I was like, oh, my gosh, what happened? And then I realized that, you know, they have these rules on how the sisters should dress. Now, we just put up a thing about the original fez, but at any rate, the fez does represent the womb, but I'm not talking about the fez right now. I'm talking about the turban. They have the sisters in there wearing turbans that are damn near flat, the kind that you buy that you really wear in bed to cover your head and stuff. They forced them into not having anything about them that's royal. You understand what I'm saying? And it's horrible. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. So when you go into there, they'll sing church hymns and replace it with Prophet Noah Drew Ali's appellation or known traditional church hymns, and replace it with it's just like reverse church. They control the people, and definitely they control the women, because remember, the sisters have a power that is very difficult for someone else to navigate. Power. She has to do it. You know, she's the one who's the first teacher. Right. So they try to control it. And then we had mentioned also they got a cover of a 101 where they're admitting that they're afraid of this power that she has, because she is falling humanity. Instead of uplifting fallen humanity, they're like, no, we're going to stand over her with the sword up our sleeve in case she lands down. They're not holding her anymore. They're not holding her as is on the 101 because she's unconscious, waiting, and when she wakes up, the great meeting will be on. They got her laying on the ground unconscious, with standing over her with a sword up one sleeve in case she tries to wake up again and cut her head off. Now that should be enough.
That's copying in reverse.
Huh?
That's Kali in reverse.
Yes. Oh, that's Kali in reverse. So, yeah, they're going to take the place of Mama. So, no doubt. And now all of that is patriarchal mindset and thinking. Like, how can you, yeah, we don't even want to get into that. But I just wanted to say that, this is what they're doing because they have, ruined. They're not doing what the prophet says in that respect. So, again, I want to reiterate that it has to come back to home. The temple is you. Your home is, you're the first temple. Your home is the temple. Your children are coming out of the temple and into the society. Which intention of the temple of building was representing in the first place? It's representative of that, but it's what we must be. But like you said, the mental slavery, well, came to take us out of that mental slavery.
Mhm.
Crazy.
And you know what? I just want to make a mention because something you said about these temples have Moors thinking that you can't be a Moor unless you come through the temple. But here's the thing: you got these modern Europeans. They're Jewish. They call themselves so-called Jews. What nationality is that?
It is.
You have these people, Moors and Europeans, talking about they're Christian. What nationality is that? Because Christian is not a nationality. Then you have these people. They call themselves Buddhists. What nationality is that? There's no nationality called Buddhist. Mm-hmm. There's no nationality called Hindustan. There's no nationality called Toe. There's no. These are all life philosophies they call religion. These are these are the things. This is a science. All right. It's not a nationality. It's a science.
But wait a minute, you're not putting down Buddhism. You're just making the distinction that it is religion, and then the people need to know what religion is, which means re-allegiance. So that's what you're bringing out.
Right. So you're going into these temples, and they're saying that there's a temple. What is the and then it says this in the one on what is the religion? Islamism. All right. Okay. So is Islamism a nationality?
Yeah.
Because this is about declaring your nationality. And your nationality is Moorish, more of Madrid al-Aqsa, with a political jurisdiction, Moorish American national. What does that have to do with the science that you are studying to know or supposed to be knowing in the temple where it says your religion is Islamism? That and the other thing that you said, which is right on point, and I think we talked about this last week at the beginning of the show. We said that a lot of people look at this Christian and Islam as though it is a religion, and it's not. Christianity is about mental enslavement. Islam is about mental empowering. So you just mentioned, you said that these sisters are going into these temples, and these people in the temple is telling, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, that, and the other. That's Christianity, all right, or Christian. That's that Christian crusade, which is enslaving the mind.
There's church. That's right.
You're supposed to think. You're not supposed to think. You're not supposed to be independent. You're a slave. You have no ability to think and make decisions for yourself. You're incompetent. That's what that's saying.
She also mentioned that they'll be in there. The Grand Sheiks will be in there. And see, what we're saying is not hearsay. Well, to a degree it could be, but go into one yourself and find it to be true. And they'll be talking about, what the sister did, to hurt the brother, and they're not talking uplifting stuff because all the answers to that is right there. So why, in the Circle 7, which was divinely prepared, to me, as an oracle for our problems of today that need to be addressed. So why don't you uplift through that, knowing that your mission is to uplift fallen humanity, even if you thought she was a fallen sister, which we are, which knows humanity has fallen. So, and she's humanity. So why wouldn't you say the things to uplift instead of talking? And, really it's emotional because, a lot of sons are emotional, whether they realize it or not. And they're talking about what the sister did to brother, and she wants to, she really wants to have the riches and diamond rings and stuff like that. And I'm like, what? They should be ran out of the temple with that, because the answers to all the problems, theirs and hers, and the children and the nation, is supposed to be what is manifested or taught in the daggone temple. So it's absolutely out of order.
Right. And it has to be absolutely comprehended that this is about helping everyone to be the leader that they already are. That's all this is about. That means that you ain't under nobody, all right? That means you're independent, competent, able to make decisions for yourself. And if that is not what's being promoted, then you're more than likely under some Christian crusade mental programming.
Yeah.
That's all there is. There's nothing else. You're either, whatever you're a part of is either trying to empower you or continue in the mental slavery.
Well, I think Cujo said it best last week when he said, look, if you're more, it's the matriarch, period.
That's right.
That's it.
It was Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday, I think they said it. I heard it somewhere. Yeah, Thursday, last Thursday. Sons of Allah, yeah. So it's about the matriarch. So there you go. Anything else is matriarch. So
that's right.
Clear. So what they did was, check it out. For those who may not know, the Moorish Divine National activity and movement and temples were so strong that if they were, when they came in to infiltrate, if they would have just shut them all down, and they would just come back up with the same concept and in the same thing. So what they did was they sent in infiltrators, agents, most of them were reverends and preachers or whatever. They sent them in to take the places of the Grand Sheik and make sure that this thing was looked at as church. So that's why I would call it reverse church, because that's what happened. That is truly what went down. And then around that time in the 1930s, early 30s, you will find all of those other organizations, associations were established, such as Father Divine, Daddy Grace, the Temple of Islam, which is really what the Nation of Islam, Temple of Islam, and a few others, because they took the finances that were stolen and they paid them off to take these positions. So here we are generations later, and that's why we're where we are in terms of the temples being infiltrated and looked at as only a religious choice, but not a true religious choice, because you got to know what religion really is. It's law, order, and governing principles, but looked at as a dogma, in other words, this is how they slipped in the patriarchal mindset into the temples. That's right. The patriarchal mindset has been slipped into the Moorish science temples of America and into the entire movement. That's how they did it. Joint.
Yes. Yeah. We have got to know history. And, sisters, y'all got to wake up. Y'all been so lax in your duties. And son, you all have to wake up and recognize, Mother is your Savior.
They're not going to recognize much. They're going to recognize much unless the mother has instilled it into them while building their temple. Let's just face it. It all comes down to her. It really does. And we just need to be honest about that.
You're absolutely correct. This is why it is imperative for the mothers to wake up. Because if you are with in a relationship with a son in terms of a mate, it is for you to assist him in coming back into the fold. But it's also for him to assist you to a degree. But neither one of it really did. The best way to do this, and really, in my opinion, the only way to do this is to, the prophet said, look, I've given you enough to save a nation, now go out and save yourself. Here's the bitter pill that everyone is going to have to swallow. You may be with friends, family, you may be in a relationship, and you may love these people, and that's very real. But the studying has to be for you. You're the one that has got to save yourself. And it sounds cruel and it sounds selfish, but what happens is when you start to study and you start to change, your energy is going to change. It's going to change, and it is the change of your energy that is going to help the people that you come in contact with wake up. And it is not done by words. It is all done by energy. And if you don't believe me, here's a wonderful example, although it may not be so wonderful. If you are in some of your friends and family and even the relationship that you find yourself in, when your energy starts to change, those friends, they will pass away. They do not also change their energy. They will pass away. You meaning you will not interact with them the way you used to. Some of your family, you're not going to interact with them the way you used to either, because you changed your energy. And lastly, if you are in a relationship, that may pass away as well, because if they don't keep up with the change of your energy, the universal rule or the universal law is like attract like. And if there is not enough alike, you will begin to repel each other and you will go in different directions. And that is the way it is. Islam? Roz, are you there?
Oh, yes. I was talking and I didn't realize I had hit the mute button. I was saying that's in the scriptures as well. That's in the scriptures. It says that you really have to be of the same yoke. It's what you're really sharing right now, because it says you will be lying in bed and one will be taken and the other one will be left. That's what this is about.
That's right. That's right. That is it, and that is all. And, and that really concludes our broadcast, unless there's something else you want to wrap up with. We're pretty much.
On this day, I think we covered, I did want to mention also, we cleared up because someone had said that, this is an example of our wrong mindset. We're looking at the law of the land, which is the law of the land, and whether we touch it, don't touch it, read it, don't read it. I'm not saying that we aren't, because we need to read it. And to enforce it, you have to. But whether we did it, we didn't. It's still the law of the land. It remains that way. That is how eloquent the document itself is. It really is the most spiritual document out there, quite frankly. And the principles, ancient principles of civilization, it is described in divine law, all right? That is the spirit in which it is done. But there's some people say where Article 6 is, that it says all contracts entered into prior to this Constitution. I want to make it real clear. We may have taxed on it, but I want to make it real clear. The agreements that these modern Europeans had such as the Articles of Confederation of 1643, of 1777, and any other constitution or agreement that they think they laid down. Two things. One, a lot of them were between England or Britain, and it doesn't apply to the American law. But more importantly is that none of those are what is meant when it says articles agreed to, because they weren't properly agreed to those who were actually in authority of the land and of the government here. And again, we go back to some people looking at Great Britain laws, rules, regulations, etc., and applying them to their American land, and it cannot be done. So this is why you must take your place amongst the affairs of man and link yourself back to the family of nations, because that Great Britain law was applying to their slaves, which were modern Europeans that they brought over here under companies to work on the plantations. And as innocent as that may have appeared to the rest of us, at some point it was recognized that they were under extreme slavery, treated incorrectly, left to die, and all of that, and they applied for their independence, and we went through these processes, and some of these documents that we're telling you about is proof positive. They're in the records of American history, they're in the congressional records that proves the succession of affairs. So it's important not for someone to want to uphold as an example, the Articles of Confederation that had no true validity here. Is someone who is in the mindset of a European, and they are not in their Moorish American mindset at all, because they don't know who's who and what is what. So that knocks that out. And the fact that there was someone else that was saying that the treaty was between the Moroccan kingdom, when that is absolutely incorrect, because the Moroccan kingdom didn't have that power. The emperor of Morocco is the emperor of the empire, not of the kingdom. So for those who are under some group, like I think called MAG or something like that, we got an email stating that, and that is an absolute error, because they didn't make a treaty between the Moroccan kingdom at all. I mean, if you wanted to just touch on that, Annie, because you had explained how.
Well, the Moroccan kingdom wasn't around in 1786. The Moroccan kingdom came into being in 1956.
Right.
So
right.
That's a whole. That's like that's what. That was 1700. 1700, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was written, and that's not the first Treaty of Peace and Friendship, but it is, I believe, that's probably the last treaty between Morocco proper and any other Moorish family.
But so there's another thing to take into account here, and I can't remember the treaty that was supposed to be done between some certain so-called Indians with the U.S.A. If there's a treaty with the U.S.A., it's not valid anyway.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not. That the treaty. See, and here's the crazy thing. Now, you had in the mid to late 1800s, there were treaties being entered into with the more modern Europeans under the United States of America. Now, what's interesting, and I know this to be a fact because, my sister was talking with a sister who, she's classified as one of those so-called Indian Appalachians, and she told my sister that these modern Europeans who either they became the mate of the Moors, branded Indian, their offspring, those modern Europeans, because we have this thing where, we try to help any people out. Our downfall is that we took these modern Europeans in and, they started impersonating us, and then we went to sleep. So now you got these modern Europeans running around talking about we the Indians. They are the ones who were entering into these treaties. They are the ones who are alleging to sell the land, which, it's inheritance. Inheritance cannot be bought, sold, or transferred. But if people don't know that, then they think that an estate, an inheritance, was actually sold. It is these modern Europeans who are running around disguised as Indians, which is a form of a brand, and they're the ones alleging to go into these treaties with other modern Europeans. So you see, this is all a big ruse. This is all a big disguise. These modern Europeans, they're just everybody. For real. Everybody.
Right.
You go to Hawaii where you have Moors, which is a Moorish land. You got modern Europeans disguised as Hawaiians. You go to Brazil, you got modern Europeans disguised as Moors. You go to Cuba, you got modern Europeans disguised as Moors. You go over to, of all places, South Africa, where the land, the sun is so heavy that you have no choice but to be heavily melanated. But over there, you got modern Europeans disguised as Moors, calling themselves Africanos. So they go all over the planet Earth, disguising themselves under brand names as Moors. And then, unfortunately, because the Moors don't have the proper information, they're like, oh, well, I want to be an Indian too. Now you got the Moors talking about, I'm an Indian. And now the modern Europeans are disguised as Americans. Isn't that right?
That's the key. The Americans, they're really trying to be Americans, and that's where Aboriginal comes into play heavy. Because if you're Aboriginal, you're indigenous, but if you're indigenous don't mean you're Aboriginal. So they're trying to be American, and they go wherever they go.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
And the other thing that came out, it was like an epiphany. They are a type of They are a type of American, but they leave off the qualifying portion of the name American. See, they are American citizens.
Right.
The Moors are American national, but they leave off the citizen and the national, just like when they say United States, they leave off of America. See, they leave off the qualifiers so that people would then know. And this is where the confusion comes into play, running around talking about, the United States is warring with Siberia. No, you better add the qualifier. That's the United States of America that's fighting with Syria.
Right.
And then they say, they're killing Americans. So they're killing American citizens who are attacking the Aboriginal indigenous people of Syria, trying to do the same thing over there that they did everywhere else.
Well, so you're absolutely correct, because back in the day, we remember when they had so-called hostages, they released them, and this was back in the 80s, because my mom was alive and she died in 81, so I know. And I was sitting there watching her with her. They released all of the Moors. They didn't make a big media stink about the fact that they did. And also, we talked to people who've been, and some of you veterans who've been in these wars for these modern Europeans, where they would come and they said that they would all be sleeping in the dugout hole or whatever it is, they sleep in the foxhole or whatever. They would wake up and the modern Europeans' throat would be slashed, and a note would be there for the brother saying, "This is not your war." Now that's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might not speak about it much. That's very traumatic, but that's a fact, and some of you listening know that it is because you were there, or you know your family members, and you might not have believed it when they told you, or you certainly didn't have the concept to understand it because you really thought that the war that was being fought was for the Americans when it really was the United States of America going in the name of Americans, which is why everybody hates Americans. And let me tell you something, it's also why it is very, very, very important to declare your nationality and know the distinctions. It really is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with
that,
Wait, lastly, the Pope has come over and said he's relinquished all that control. It is definitely time for us to definitely take our place amongst the affairs of man. Because if we don't, and we still want to run around with whatever these modern Europeans stealing as government and control over you are doing, we're going to fall right back into that place. But that's all right, because this is just that time. Is you is or is you ain't. I know that's improper, but I'm using it as a slang. It's very, very important right now. And that's why for our people to be spending their time diving into their legalities that are not law is a waste of their mind, their energy, and they're not working for their family. We have embraced the modern Europeans in peace, and it's proven that it was done. That Constitution is the proof of it. If they and us would simply enforce the law of our land, nobody would be molested. And that's it, and that is all. And with that, if you choose to close out, we can go.
Yes.
Happy giving of thanks. This is just a day to give the same thanks for the crop and whatever you have reaped, you sow, because we're getting ready to go into the winter months where not much is growing, and this is why the family always truly preserved any food. It came into canning later, but prior to the canning, I know for a fact, because my family has told me, they would bury certain types of food under the earth, and it stayed refrigerated and cold. And Mama knew, and so did the children, knew exactly where to go to dig up those provisions, and that's what we did. So we preserved for the coming ensuing time where not much is grown. So if you don't plant your seeds, you won't reap any crop. You just won't. And those seeds start in your thought. It is your thought. So as we go into the winter and we come out of that in the waters of Pisces for the spring, during that time, you are to also be planting seeds. And whatever you planted will spring forth in the spring with everything else. Right now, you're supposed to be reaping what you've already sown. Basically what you've sown and what you've planted. That's what you're supposed to be doing right now, and giving thanks for it. So don't not acknowledge this time just because the Europeans came in and messed it up, all right, or gave it another light. It doesn't change the fact that it is a celestial vibration, which means a celebration. So give thanks for everything that you've been graced with. Islam.
Yes. Islam. And we shall see you back on the next broadcast, which would be Tuesday. Peace and love to everyone.
Now, wait a minute. You got to mention that the Sons of Allah will be doing part 2.
We mentioned that we were going to do a broadcast today around Thanksgiving and what it really means. But we also had some breaking news regarding this whole Ferguson issue that went down sometime last night. I want to say sometime after 8:30, 9 o'clock. So what we're going to do, because we do feel that people need this information about Thanksgiving, is we're going to take the first maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes of the show. We're going to put down a little bit of information regarding Thanksgiving and what it really means. And then we're going to go into this whole, let's talk about Ferguson. So with that, let me just say, many Asiatic people celebrate Thanksgiving without really knowing what it means. Do you know what the turkey represents? And like I said, since the issue of Ferguson is on the table, we felt it was appropriate to do a split show and discuss it. Now, question to ask, did you know Ferguson is a corporation? Big question mark. They were incorporated in 1874. So how can a corporation have a grand jury indictment? That would require a delegation of authority pursuant to Article 3, Section 1 of the American Constitution in 1791. So I put that on the table, but we're going to start off first.
Let let me add something. May I add something? That is why, if anybody was listening today, they're saying that it's going to a federal grand jury, like it's going to be reviewed again, because they're messing around in corporate, non-delegated venues.
Arenas.
Yep. So, yeah, there you go. There you go.
So we know that this whole Ferguson thing, it's like, you know, let's just get the Thanksgiving thing out of the way. I know, because we really want to put it out there, but let's just put it on the table and get into the Ferguson issue, because it is.
Well, no, because that's going to be all night. Let's do this.
Now, Thanksgiving, it is a time, and I know Raza's going to put in on that. Thanksgiving represents a time of harvest. Initially, that was the purpose of it, and that was the whole celebrating. We worked in harmony with Mother Earth, the sun and the universe and all of the elements, as well as the moon energy. And because we worked in harmony with Mother Earth, you know, made sure that we had a bounty to sustain us through the winter. And really, we got to really go back and think about that. That's recent, because remember, planet Earth at one time was a completely subtropical planet. So we didn't really have an issue with winter until, of course, we did some damage and tilted the Earth on its axle. But we had to make some adjustments for that. And that resulted in us giving thanks. And really, you know, it's just giving thanks that Mother Earth has provided for us, given that we did some damage to Mother Earth. So it's really sort of like, I'm going to say, like an atonement and a Thanksgiving at the same time. So that was the harmonious portion of it. However, there was a time when the modern Europeans came on the scene that it became something else. And the Thanksgiving as it is celebrated today is all about the demise or the fall of the Moors. And the turkey, the turkey represents the Turks, which is the Moors. And so when you look at the fact that a lot of people at this time of the year are cutting off the head of the turkey, which represents the Moors, it was changed or altered for the modern European to symbolize the cutting off of the Moor's head and the taking over of their estate. It doesn't change the fact that it originally was a Thanksgiving. And so, you know, there's a lot of historical information, and I know Ms. is probably chomping at the bit to get into this as well. There's a lot of historical information regarding the true purpose of Thanksgiving, the thanking of that bounty. But we also need to recognize some of the things that we're doing today that is contrary to that Thanksgiving, such as the cutting off of the turkey's head. And with that, I'll yield the floor on the turkey edition or the Thanksgiving edition. I'll yield the floor.
Islam. Peace and love. I just wanted to add on with the whole concept of Thanksgiving that, as you said, it was originally a celebration for Moors. And they say the Iroquois tribe, which they call Seneca, was originally celebrating it in a 9-day fashion, which was in midwinter, which was really around February. So I did my research a little bit on the Seneca Aboriginal American people, right, knowing they're Moors. And the true appellation of that said tribe is called Salamanca. And the root word in it is salam, S-A-L-A-M. And I'm like, wow, this was an Islamic people, had to be, because they were celebrating it in 9 days for 9 days, excuse me. And the root word of the actual tribe is salam. And I'm like, when I look at the word Iroquois, I see the word Iraq, not for anything, but this is just, I'm seeing the correlation in the appellations to the people, you know, that were actually the originators of the celebration. But it's also said that the Europeans, the first said Thanksgiving celebration was in 1621 with the Europeans, because the Moors were showing them they had their first successful crop, and Moors provided them with 5 deers. I don't know if this is true, but I know that this is why in 1789, George Washington declared that the Thanksgiving should be celebrated on the 4th Thursday of every November. And it was based off of the first pilgrims, so-called pilgrims, or Europeans, really, you know, that were giving, that received an offering from Moors, you know, and had their first successful crop in 1621. But they said that it wasn't originally something that was intended to be celebrated every year. Just when George Washington looked at the history, he decided that it should be celebrated on the 4th Thanksgiving. And then Abraham Lincoln, around 1863, made a proclamation saying that, you know, Thanksgiving shall be celebrated for the Europeans anyway on the 4th Thursday of the month of November. So just to bring it up to date, in 1939, Franklin Roosevelt, he tried to push Thanksgiving up a week, you know, and the reason for him doing that was because he wanted to give depression retailers an opportunity to make more money during the shopping season. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think this is the origin of the Black Friday, because they took it from a natural celebration, you know, to a commercial activity, if you will, because they were going through a depressed period in 1933, and even before then, when Moors were really active, shaking this whole thing up, and you know, they got depressed because of that, and so their economy, their artificial economy was doing so bad, he tried to push it up. And I never really knew, but just doing some general research, you know, I think this is the origin of the Black Friday sales and all of that. Because though he did it in 1939, in 1941 they signed the act affirming that Thanksgiving shall be celebrated on the 4th Thursday of every November. And people weren't taking that so-called Christian, well, it really was a Crusader holiday, though we were celebrating it in different forms, like with the cornucopia opposed to a turkey. You know what I mean? We were always giving that in Thanksgiving. But for them, they didn't really have that gratitude, so a lot of them weren't taking that celebration serious or whatever. So, you know, that whole move with trying to move it up a week for the depression retailers, they decided later that, okay, we have to promote this quote-unquote holiday. And that's when Macy's had their first Thanksgiving Day parade in 1924. And all of this us is connected with the Black Friday sales and all of that. But I just wanted to say, you know, for Moors, you know, we've been celebrating Thanksgiving for the longest time, and that was like an everyday celebration. And if I may just add on reference out of the Circle 7, chapter 35, religion. It says, "Oh, praise his goodness with songs of thanksgiving, and meditate in silence on the wonders of his love. Let thy heart overflow with gratitude and acknowledgement. Let the language of thy lips speak praise and adoration. Let the actions of thy life show love to his law." And again, that's chapter 35, religion, Circle 7, Holy Quran. So I say that to say that us celebrating Thanksgiving is ancient for us, but for them it's kind of modern. Oh, also, it, in all reality, like lambs, like, or rams, they're considered bulls. Like anything with horns is considered a bull. Anything with horns is a bull. And one of the European women who was trying to like really promote this modern day Thanksgiving to be celebrated, her name was Sarah Hale. Sarah Hale. You can, do your research on her. She's the one who wrote the nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb. And the first Thanksgiving for the Europeans being celebrated here was not with the turkey. It was not. And when you look at the polarity around, the bull's time in Taurus and Scorpio, all of this really correlates to the opposite reflection of the flesh they were eating, if you get my drift. So she did like a 30-year campaign. She did like a 30-year campaign to get Thanksgiving recognized as a quote-unquote modern-day national holiday, though we know it's a European Christian holiday. So that's the real truth. Now, it was mentioned that Moors didn't celebrate Thanksgiving in the fashion that they did. But the first Thanksgiving was, they say, in 1621, and Europeans and Moors sat down again, going back to the beginning, where Moors were showing them how to harvest, how to crop, how to reap a beneficial harvest, if you will, at the least. So they sat down and ate in November or that time, and everything was well. It was peace. But then later, as it went on, it says within a few years, the children of the people who ate together, which these are Moors and Europeans, at the first Thanksgiving, were killing one another in what led to the King Philip's War. So do your research on the King Philip's War, because this is what happened in North America after the first Thanksgiving in conjunction with Moors and Europeans, because Moors was always celebrating and giving thanks to the Creator and everything around that sustained us. But after celebrating it with the Europeans, a few years later, this is what broke out. So do your research on the King Philip's War. And if I'm not mistaken, I'll definitely have to do a little bit more research, but who they're calling King Philip was actually from the Iroquois tribe, or the Iroquois family of Moors in North America. And the Europeans called him King Philip, though he had an aboriginal appellation. You can look more into that. Anybody listening, do your cross-references. I definitely have to do some more myself. But these are just facts I just wanted to share with the family. And it says that among the Cherokee Moors did not celebrate European-style Thanksgiving until 1885, like officially. This is when like Moors became like really, really Christianized and started celebrating heavy every year from 1885, Gregorian calendar. And the Cherokees were raising corn as early as 1000 BC. Before European contact, the Cherokees were already participating in Thanksgiving ceremony. The most important ceremony of the year was called the Green Corn Ceremony, which was celebrated in July, which I think is really the origin of the 4th of July. I have to go into that, but I know that's not the subject matter of tonight, but it's interrelated as to where the origin of all of these things come from. Because even in what they call Egypt, it was a celebration in July that was celebrating, the what they call today the Dog Star Series, which was all about giving thanks and things that give nourishment to harvest crops. Like all of these are interrelated. So, so I just wanted to add that on, and that was my piece on the so-called Thanksgiving. but it's definitely something that we've been celebrating before European contact. And for what it is today, you know, we have to really comprehend the origins of it and how they went from, you know, celebrating or being giving offerings of deer meat and fields to grow crops in, you know, in their settlement, because you have to remember, these people didn't come here, well, they did, they had a different intent, but when they seen how we lived in the element of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, they thought they could take advantage of us, you know what I mean? But they were really escaping persecution from Moors across the Great Atlantis. Like, that was their whole motivation for coming here to a certain extent, because, again, you know, as history reflects, Colombo did try to get a mandate from England and got rejected. But the subjects of England, you know, in Europe and Great Britain, etc., they were escaping persecution. So they gave thanks because we showed them, all right, well, if you're going to be here in the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and some could argue that it was naivety looking back or whatever, but they gave thanks, you know, and when the treaties were officially being signed with the true possessors of the Moroccan Empire, which was Moors, they incorporated actually celebrating the Thanksgiving Day, the 4th November, back in in the 1700s or 1800s. Well, no, George Washington issued a proclamation in the 1700s, and then in 1863, that's when Abraham Lincoln issued another proclamation, and that's when they started taking it a little more serious. And from my comprehension, it was the Detroit Lions football team who was like the first to really try to promote that holiday on the national level, which is why every so-called Thanksgiving you have a Thanksgiving Day football game, regardless of what. You know what I mean? So I don't know. These are things I observed just from where we're at today. This whole concept of the commercial activity and the Black Friday with the Macy's first celebration and the sales and all of that, it just correlates. But I'll say, you know, we're definitely, you know, the first ones to give thanks to the environment, the foundation, the earth that we live on, and the Creator for bringing us here and making this foundation for us to be here. So with that, on Thanksgiving, I yield the floor, family. Peace and love.
Islam. I have to say, I'm sorry, were you saying something, Lynn?
No, I was just saying Islam.
all right. I have to say, I'm glad that we're going over this. Ms., that chapter 35, I think you quoted, that's real good. That's real peace, because we always give thanks. As you said, we always give thanks. Now, the entire season here, from the fall or autumn, when we deal with being in tune with nature and the earth plane that we're on now, particularly in North America, we are dealing with nature in that, you know, there's a time to plant, and there's a time to time to plant, a time to sow, a time to reap, and a time to grow, etc. like that. So we're in the harvesting time from fall really until winter solstice. So we're giving thanks, of course, all the time, but in particular as we relate ourselves to the earth plane, where for the most food is not growing in the earth, but you would be preserving it now. You would be harvesting what you have sown, you know, or what you have reaped from what you have sown, from what you have planted. And then when you get to the winter solstice, you really, you know, that preparation is all done, and you really look to see, have I sown enough to, you know, sustain me through the winter months that come after the solstice. So we're in tune with nature with that. And we celebrated it. You know, one of the reasons why I'm so glad we're bringing this up now is because I remember a few years back I put it on a site, and boy, oh boy, I had some brother, I don't know who it was now, he wrote something and he posted it everywhere because that I was absolutely wrong for us looking at celebrating Thanksgiving, and from the perspective where, Liz is saying, yes, from the corporate perspective, but I was trying to impress upon what we're doing today, this evening, is that, this is something that is our culture. And they were, and most of our people who did find out something other than the normal Thanksgiving celebration that has become commercial and is Christianized in that respect, they had found out, well, that's when they murdered us. That's when they came upon us while we were having our feast. And, they cut the heads off and they ambushed us, these European aliens. So for that reason, they thought we ought not celebrate it. But that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as we've heard a lot of times we must not do, because when we do that, we cut ourselves off from who we are. So they were coming from that perspective of the history where, we got ambushed as we sat down for feast, and we have to go beyond that. And the fact that we were even giving thanks and being in a more relaxed position is why they maybe had that opportunity. But we can't throw it out. So I'm glad we're discussing it so that it is accepted that we have to remain in tune with nature ourselves, regardless to what has gone on. And the only way to do that is to study this information and to have knowledge of what is and what is not. So I hope the brothers listening and who understand, and whoever else may be listening, will get understanding of why we're putting this out, so that we can stop looking at it from this limited commercial position and from that history of where we were possibly ambushed. And I will say this, Ms. you had mentioned earlier something about we help them to grow. Everyone knows that. I mean, when you read the Moors of Spain, you'll see, they'll say the Moors who conquered Spain. Well, automatically you got to change that conquer word to the Moors who civilized, because that's what happened. Right. Taught them how to plant food, how to take a bath, the bathhouse, the whole bit, right? So when you look at that, but you want to add something? Just something hit your mind?
Yes, before you go on, I want you to finish your thought. But I remember I was saying about the Seneca's true appellation is Salam Anka. You know what I mean?
And really bad. Go ahead.
Can you hear me clear?
Repeat that. There was a big scrape that came across there. Say that again.
Oh, all right, pardon. The so-called Seneca Aboriginal Al-Moroccans or Americans, their true appellation is Salam Anka. And Salam Anka is one of the first places that a university was instituted in so-called Spain by Moors. Now, remember, our dominion extends across the Great Atlantis to both sides. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to put that in the record as far as what you were saying about Moors. When you said that, it brought me back to, and Salamanca was one of the first institutions of learning that Moors established in with Al-Andalusia, which they call Spain or whatnot. But I didn't want to cut your thought. Please continue. I just wanted to add that on before we got lost.
That's all good. That's all good, because what I wanted to say as proof in a way, when we get ourselves involved in different things, I recall one season, because my solar return comes during the time of fall, and we went out to one of these farms that these Europeans have. They'll lease it out to you to have a bonfire and walk through the corn stalk. We chose the full moon at this time, the only full moon that was in that month. So we went out, a bunch of sisters, and we went through the stalk, the corn stalk walk. We didn't even need flashlights because the moonlight was so bright. But throughout the walk, they had different little themes. And I don't have it in front of me now, but I don't remember the appellations of these people, but it was in fact a Moor, which they will call an Indian, and I don't have his appellation, but when I say it, you'll know it was a Moor. who helped them to grow food. And they put this throughout the stalk. As we walked, there was different little displays, and they actually wrote it up that this person helped them to survive during that time. You know, and so you don't know these things until, like, you go to, say, a place like that, and they're not even hiding it. The only problem we have, with every situation we have to cut through, is we have to stop allowing them to call us Indians, you know, and then we would recognize that they're just saying, you know, the Aboriginal indigenous people who are, of course, Moors, and Moor in America is the same thing. So Native American and Aboriginal indigenous American is the same thing. So these things are not really hidden, but we found it very interesting that they're admitting that they came here and they couldn't feed themselves, they didn't know how to grow food, they didn't, however, whatever. But the other part of this, and I know, Annie, you might want to add on to this, because you've done the research on the 1643 Confederation and the 1777 Confederation, and oftentimes we'll say, well, when they came here, well, it depends on what time you're talking about when they came here, because, Ms., you mentioned it that, you know, they were subjects, right, and slaves when they first came. It was at the hands of the British Moors as slave plantation workers. Then later on, you know, they were, the whole time, you're right, they were trying to escape that hand of slavery. And so when they applied, as you said, and got denied, that was just their efforts to try to escape the British slavery.
British Moors.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So when they first came here, they were slave plantation workers under the British Moors. Islam.
Yeah.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used